goodness. I am so tired today, guys. I'm so tired and sore and stiff and everything, all those things, which is kind of a side effect of working hard and keeping up an exercise regimen. But you know what? I think it's important to stay fit, so I'm going to keep on going. So, hello guys. Once again, we are here for the, looks like I said this was the 57th live stream. Let me edit that so it's actually the 58th live stream. Did I save that? I hope I did. Yeah, saved. Okay, so this is lunch live stream number 58. Oh my gosh, we were in lockdown for quite some time. The lockdown is lightening up, so thank you guys for joining me for yet another live stream. Topic of the day today is going to be cheat meals. It's something that people ask me about every now and then. I'm still working from home, so as long as that's happening, I think I'm still going to be doing these live streams, because why the heck not? So I got the time, I got the gear, and yeah, I'm at home, so I don't need to worry about folks barging into my home office like I would at, a regular office. So this is always kind of a nice time of the day for me. It's a good break from the tedium of just, staring at the computer screen doing, trying to do my best to stay in school and not get fired from my job, stuff like that. All right, guys. So today for lunch, the ridiculous lunch that I'm eating today is this big tray of cheesecake with a couple of different varieties of cheesecake here. We've got regular old New York cheesecake, got some, I think this is a raspberry cheesecake, a delicious looking, rich, indulgent chocolate cheesecake, and a caramel apple cheesecake. So, nice variety platter of cheesecake stuff going on here. I hope you guys are doing good. I hope you guys are hanging in there during the quarantine. I think that this nice distraction of eating something like sugary and almost like a daily cheat meal is a good way to keep my spirits up while we're still socially distancing, things along those lines. Ooh, that is delicious. That is a caramel apple cheesecake right there. I've never had a caramel apple cheesecake. It is so rich and creamy. It has been way too long since I've had cheesecake. Thank you for joining the live stream. Asking for a closer look at the cheesecake. I don't know if I can really do a close-up of the cheesecake. This webcam that I'm using does not have an autofocus, so I think I basically set it to focus on something that's a couple of feet away from it. So I don't know if it would really, I don't know if the shot of getting too close to it comes through super well. But hopefully it does. Hopefully people can actually see what the heck I'm eating. And I do think it's a little bit strange that people will pop into these daily live streams where I'm eating something ridiculous, something super calorie dense on a daily basis. And, some folks ask me, let me move this over a little bit. Some folks will ask me if it's my cheat day, and it's like, well, I do this every day. As a competitive eater, I don't really have cheat days. I just try to, try not to go too crazy on the days when I'm not doing challenges, stuff like that. Of course, during the quarantine, like I've mentioned, I think my daily calorie intake, from day to day, tends to be a little bit higher. I'm doing giant challenges quite a bit less frequently than I used to, basically because I just don't have the time to do it. Well, that caramel apple cheesecake was so good. I mean, it is tough to beat just a regular old, great New York cheesecake made with sour cream, a little bit of lemon, a little bit of vanilla in there. Oh, that is extremely dense. It tastes like you probably got, I don't know, about 1,000 calories per bite in this thing. That is pretty insane. I think cheesecake has to be one of the most calorie-dense desserts just on the planet. So I guess if you need to get your calories in, cheesecake, not a bad way to do it. And it is kind of nice that you can, Almost like spoof of cheesecake. Now this morning, as per usual, make sure that I was nice and calorie deprived. I did go for a run. I hit the track, did some intervals. Oh, look at this nice speed graph down here. Just up and down and up and down and up and down with the speed. I was doing quarters and 100s. I was actually trying out this new pair of shoes. I usually run in pretty like typical shoes, but these are spikes. These are track spikes. Figured I'd try them out. These are more for like short distance track running, stuff like that. Very stiff sole. Like they don't bend much at all. It's basically like giving you a platform to really dig into the ground with those spikes and then push off with your entire foot. Just almost no flexibility in them. Super, super light. They're very fast, but oh my goodness, they are so uncomfortable. Interestingly, the track was kind of muddy. It was really rainy in the last couple of days, so it was very muddy. But I did notice that I was able to hit like comparable times to previous times when I've run on the track when it's in my other like long distance running shoes, my more comfy shoes, when it's when the track isn't doing quite so well. So we're gonna call this, call this track 400s, 400s and 100s. Blah. I really tore myself to pieces. Max effort. I worked pretty dang hard for that one. Yeah, on that last interval, I just about collapsed on the ground, just about tossed my cookies, so I think that's pretty appropriate. So we'll go ahead and save that. All right, to the topic at hand, though, I think that since a lot of people do ask me about cheat days and stuff, obviously that's something that folks are interested in hearing about. I mean, the idea behind a cheat day, I think that the idea behind a cheat day is kind of twofold. Like, number one, a lot of people think that dieting continuously for an extended period of time tends to get a little bit monotonous, so cheat day is a good way to, like, have this mental release, which is something that's a little bit too subjective for me to comment on. Like, I found for myself personally, if I did have a cheat day specifically to like indulge in things in the past, like I found that if I just committed to something and went in 100% and made sure that I was sticking to that diet every single day, that was the way that I made sure that I was able to stick to a diet really consistently. And I feel like with myself, like I have this I found that anytime that I slip a little bit, pardon me, I tend to have a little bit of what they call a what the hell effect. This is like, oh, if I ate something that was outside of my diet, I kind of say like, oh, what the hell? I'll go ahead and indulge 100%, and I just go way overboard. So I think having a cheat day for myself would just be a bad idea because I'd kind of like fixate on it, and basically every day I would only be thinking about what I was going to do the cheat day, and it would just probably be bad for my overall health. But I do see the draw for some people. I know for some people, having that one day is kind of like a mental release where they can go wild and do whatever they want. Like gives them the motivation to earn that cheat day from 6 days of really hardcore dieting to be super healthy. So, like I said, I'm not super interested in those kinds of subjective measurements. I'm more interested in like the objective measurements, the things that you can really measure, the things you can put numbers to. So, I think the idea behind a cheat day, the biggest motivation of it, I should say one of the big fears of consistent calorie restriction and consistent dieting is that it lowers somebody's metabolic rate, which is, like it's a pretty good concern to have. Like it's definitely been shown that if you consistently undereat, consistently restrict your energy intake, and then it does affect your hormones pretty badly. It causes basically hypercortisolism, which is something that I've mentioned before. Having too much free cortisol floating around your system all the time means that your body is not breaking down fat. It's not rebuilding muscle. It's basically in like fight or flight stressed out mode 100% of the time. And in fact, that's kind of the state that your body's in after you work out, after you put yourself in this giant energy deficit. But the way that you get out of that state is, of course, to make sure that you eat something. You know, that big cortisol, that big bump in cortisol kind of goes away after you get yourself back into energy balance. AJ, thank you for joining the chat today. Says, you're asking about the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. Yeah, I can talk about that maybe on another day. I think that I can talk a little bit about what's going on 4th of July. I did get contacted by Major League Eating, so I am a little bit in the loop. Yeah, I think I'll save that for another day, though. That's a decent sized topic. I won't go into that. Just as I don't think I could really do a good job answering that question just right off. Anyway, so I thought it would be a good idea to actually dig into some of the literature to see what the heck is going on when somebody is in a calorie restricting state. So we've got this study on low-calorie dieting increases cortisol. And I think that it really goes into, like, it kind of justifies a lot of the fears of low-calorie dieting. So this study broke up 121 participants. They were all ladies. So I guess this was a ladies-only study. This was done back in 2010. That's what it looks like. So about 10 years ago. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't some study that was done in like 1983 or something. So I tend to kind of discount studies if they were done too long ago, since I think that you were able to play it a little bit fast and loose and draw conclusions that weren't quite based off of like good diets that weren't based off of good data. So seeing something that's only 10 years old, that's a good sign that this one went through, a decent amount of review before it was published, made sure that these guys did their due diligence. Okay, anyway, so this study with 121 females were broken up into 4 different groups and were randomly assigned one of 4 dietary interventions for 3 weeks. And it is kind of important that these things go on for a significant amount of time. I've seen some studies that do like energy restriction studies on participants that only last like 3 days or something like that. It's ridiculous. You're not going to be able to draw any conclusions off of something like that. You tend to only see the negative effects from energy restriction if it lasts longer than about a week. So let's see. So it was broken into 4 different groups. Basically, it was broken up into groups that were eating normally or restricting the calories, and then each one of those groups was broken up again into 2 separate groups of monitoring their calories or not monitoring their calories. So presumably the people who are not monitoring their calories but were calorie restricted were probably like given their food, stuff like that. Pardon me. And basically did they talk about how they were testing for cortisol? Yes, before and after interventions, participants completed measures of perceived stress and 2 days of diurnal saliva sampling for tests of cortisol. Now, it's also a pretty good thing that they were testing cortisol levels multiple times a day, because that is kind of a snapshot when you get it from your saliva. Like it gives you a good snapshot of like what your saliva looks like at the time that I should say what your cortisol levels are, which is like the objective measure of how stressed you are right when you take the sample. So doing it a couple of times a day. Of course, your cortisol kind of goes up and down depending on what time of day it is. And I could read a bunch of this gobbledygook, but I'm going to scroll right down to the cheat sheet, to the discussion section, where they talk about the stuff that they found. Let's see, dieting is one of the most common behaviors for weight control. Thank you. Monitoring one's diet involved continuous recordings of consumed food. Let's see, like stressors characterized in daily hassle literature, monitoring via the use of food diaries likely increased perceived stress by creating repeated stressors throughout the day. So obviously people had an increased perception of stress based on whether or not they were tracking their calories, which again, that's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of the macro counting diets is yeah, it is just really bothersome, and it kind of creates more stress around eating than is particularly necessary. Let's see. Restricting, on the other hand, increased total cortisol output among the participants. This is consistent with previous research. This finding may seem unexpected. Why was it unexpected? As restricting calorie intake can trigger mechanisms to reduce energy expenditure, and including reduced corticotrophin releasing hormone. I am not familiar what that is, but okay. It released some hormone output, which in turn may reduce cortisol downstream. However, restricting calorie intake may be a biological stressor. What? Restricting calorie intake may be a biological stressor? Was that a surprise to someone? Oh my goodness. Of course it's a biological stressor. Okay, anyway. Let me see here. The stress resulting from restricting one's calories to a mere 1,200 calories per day, therefore, may have reduced the absolute amount of energy available to the body. Another kind of well-duh statement. Therefore, leading to increased cortisol output to release energy stores. Alternatively, the increase in cortisol under conditions of caloric restriction may simply reflect a biological freeing of energy that is entirely not stress-mediated. I mean, I think that there's nothing super surprising there. I'm kind of surprised, a little bit baffled that somebody needed to like do a study to measure this. I think this was basically like a study to confirm what everybody knows, that, you know, dieting and restricting calories is super stressful in the body. So I find it a little bit strange that they say that it was surprising that it was a biological stress. I mean, of course it's going to be a biological stress when you're restricting calories, stuff like that. And in order to make sure that I'm not restricting calories too much, I'm going to eat a piece of this raspberry cheesecake. I swear, first of all, that was delicious. If they ever have a cheesecake eating contest, I got that thing on latch, man. Oh, Johnny Styles, thank you for joining the chat. Thank you for joining the live stream. Says, hey, Steve the Rabbit, how are you? I'm doing fabulous. Thank you for asking. Always good to see you in the chat. Okay, so we have determined that restricting calories, absolutely a great way, a very popular method of reducing one's body weight, of improving one's, how should I say, their body composition, stuff like that. Unfortunately, when you do reduce calories for too long, like I said, I've seen some studies that say that a reduction in the metabolic rate, an increase in levels of cortisol tends to happen after about a week of consistent calorie restriction. So you can find lots of articles online. I found this one called Fitness Black and White, and it seems to have some pretty good information about the dangers of calorie restriction, consistent calorie restriction, talking about a cheat day. And it's entitled, How One Diet Cheat Day Every Single Week Can Promote More Weight Loss. So let's see, how diet cheat days are good for fat loss. To be fair, I'm not going to say that counting calories is better than following the Eat, Stop, Eat. In fact, I still have... Okay, so let's see. The main idea behind Eat, Stop, Eat, it sounds like it's intermittent fasting, basically, or intermittent calorie restriction, I should say, with cheat days, is that you are creating a calorie deficit over the course of a week, not each day. Some days you will eat above maintenance. Other days you will eat well below. At the end of the week, though, you will have eaten under your calorie requirement if you didn't pig out on feeding days. And I mean, that's pretty consistent with the way that competitive eaters tend to eat, with having like giant calorie days and then like probably eating below maintenance on other days. Let's see. So what does this have to do with cheating on your diet every week? Etc., etc. The problem here is that the body adapts to living off of fewer calories. dieting following a low-calorie plan actually makes your body less efficient at burning fat from week to week. And it's basically because of a buildup of cortisol, I think is the main thing. And it says that some of the effects of it is that your leptin decreases, which is a hormone. Leptin and ghrelin are two of the hormones that are really the big players in managing like your hunger levels, how hungry you feel. And it says that leptin also is associated with fat burning, which is something I didn't know. I'm going to have to look that up, see if that's true. T3 and T4 thyroid hormones decrease. That is a really big one right there. Your thyroid hormone, this kind of butterfly-shaped hormone, not your hormone, organ, your thyroid organ, which is in your neck, kind of wraps around your esophagus, is a lot of people call it like the thermostat for your entire body, which is, it's not too far off. It's part of this axis of a couple of different organs, which basically control your stress levels, your calorie output, your basal metabolic rate, stuff like that. So a decrease in thyroid hormone, of course, that causes a slowdown in metabolic rate. And that's similar to like acute hypothyroidism, maybe something like that. Hypothyroidism seems to be one of those ailments that's becoming a little bit more common, a little bit more like mainstream. Like people tend to give it a little bit more credence nowadays. Let's see. Ghrelin increases hunger, which of course, if you're reducing the amount of food that you're eating, of course you're going to feel more hungry. Like that's kind of another well done one. And cortisol, and they talk about cortisol, of course, I mentioned that, which they say that it is believed to cause belly fat, but I think that prolonged increased cortisol has been pretty definitively shown to reduce fat burning, stuff like that. Yeah, so they basically go on to talk about how they do cheat days, stuff like that. So like I said, this is fitnessblackandwhite.com is the name of this website if you want to check out that article. I think they do a pretty good job of talking about intermittent fasting, stuff like that, in a little bit more of a digestible manner than some of these big studies that I like to read. But, of course, I do read the studies. I found this study on something that they call the Matador study, which they talk about intermittent energy restriction, which to me it sounded like cheat days. I think that their definition of intermittent energy restriction was basically like one day on a diet, one day off a diet kind of thing, and comparing it to people who are on a diet consistently. So let's see. Matador, the Matador diet, which is a ridiculous acronym for minimizing adaptive thermogenesis and deactivating obesity rebound. Which is a bit of a mouthful, but I think that's basically a wordy way of talking about how to minimize your body going into quote-unquote starvation mode and minimize the effects of bouncing back after you get off of a diet. So let's see, this study took a group of men and randomized 16 weeks either on continuous or intermittent energy restriction. Completed, like I said, 8 times 2 weeks of energy restriction, alternating by 2 weeks of energy balance. Okay, so that was what their intermittent was. Their intermittent strategy was. Let's see, 47 participants completed a 4-week baseline phase of the intervention, blah, 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 blah. During ER, energy intake was the equivalent of 2/3 of maintenance. So I guess if these are obese men, that could be quite a huge calorie deficit. So we're not just talking about like 500 calories under a day, probably something close to like 1,000 calories below maintenance every single day. So the results, that is the interesting bit. So they say that 19 of the men were able to stick to the continuous energy deficit, while 17 men were able to stick to the intermittent energy deficit protocol. And let's see, the weight loss was greater for the people in the intermittent group, which is an average of 14 kilograms versus 9.1 kilograms. Oh my goodness, that is giant. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is a lot of weight lost. And also the intermittent group had greater fat loss. So they lost 12.3 kilograms of fat versus 8 kilograms of fat. Oh my goodness, that is giant. That is incredible. So I think that's like pretty definitive proof that just like reducing calories without really thinking about it, just cutting your calories in half or cutting it by a quarter or something like that, and using that simple strategy for weight loss, it's been proven pretty definitively that just cutting your calories is not a great way to lose weight. I'm looking over the conclusions to see if there's anything interesting there. I don't see anything super interesting in the conclusions. Just talking about how, yeah, guess what? Intermittent calorie restriction, better than the consistent calorie restriction. Eric Cruz, thank you for joining the chat. Asks if you have a pretty good diet. Is there no need for a cheat day? I mean, pardon me. Cheat day, like I was mentioning basically the whole time, is that cheat day is about energy balance. So if you're not dieting, then of course not. Like a cheat day is probably not going to be doing you any favors, anything like that. Likewise, I don't think that one cheat day a week is going to have a giant impact negatively on your health. So it's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of the other, whichever you want. But this is like, I feel like most people just take weight loss and health to be basically the same thing. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. Of course, people mostly talk about weight loss, but since I'm not too worried about my weight at the moment, what's more on the forefront of my mind is like hormone balance. So it is interesting to know that the cheat days, if you are in a consistent energy deficit, also do help your hormones stay in check. So it helps keep your thyroid hormones level. It helps keep your cortisol from going too high, things like that. Now, the one study that I did look at was not just cheat days, but going on and off a diet for 2-week intervals. I have seen some studies that have looked specifically at a 1-day refeed of somebody who's, eating 1,000 calories over their maintenance calories 1 day a week, and then eating under by like 500 calories for the rest of the week. So their weekly energy deficit is bigger, even if their daily calorie deficit is not always negative. I should say their weekly calorie deficit is, that makes sense. They have a weekly calorie deficit, even if they do not have a daily calorie deficit 7 days a week. I have looked at some studies like that, and they show basically the same thing. I wasn't able to find those studies. Sorry, guys. I'm not perfect. I don't keep these things tabbed, in my browser, stuff like that. But since we are talking about calories, and we all know that I have a cheat day basically every day that ends in Y, so may as well eat some chocolate cheesecake. Let's see. Each one of these pieces of cheesecake is a little over 300 calories. So if I eat one of each of these pieces of cheesecake, that's about 12 to 1,300 calories. Which definitely replaces all the calories. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that replaces all of the calories that I expended working out this morning. We're running a little bit low on time, so I think I'm going to hold off on my last day of giving to charities. Probably do that tomorrow. If you guys want to sneak in a charity that you think is deserving, that you want me to take a look at, I got that email address down in the description, or drop a comment on this video. I definitely love to read about new charities. So definitely love to hear from you guys what your ideas are. Only 1 day left. I'm only planning on doing one more $50 donation. And, if I strike it big again in the future, maybe I'll do this again. Maybe I'll, come up with a little bit more scratch that I can toss to other charities. Because, I'm living pretty comfortably. I'm not hurting for money. So I think that it's probably a good idea to spread the love around a little bit. MJC, thank you for dropping in the live stream, man. Good to see you here. Even if it is just the last couple of moments. Asking how I'm doing. I'm doing fabulous. I am feeling 100% better now that I have 1,200 calories plus or minus of cheesecake in my belly, including this incredibly rich and decadent. Oh my goodness, this chocolate cheesecake is so rich. It is so over the top. It tastes like condensed chocolate. I don't know how to describe it. It's like if you took all of the chocolate that you typically eat over the course of like an entire year and just condensed it all down into one single bite. That's kind of what this chocolate cheesecake is. Just over the top rich. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys once again. It's always great to hang out with you guys in these live streams. Let me know if you want to hear more about dieting, if you want to hear more about fitness, or if you want to hear more about the eating competitions, eating contests that I've done, eating challenges, or maybe about what's going on in the future. AJ, you did mention Coney, Nathan's hot dog eating contest. I'll probably talk about that sometime later this week because I have seen all those articles coming out. There's some announcements, so it's pretty cool stuff. And I can talk a little bit about my feelings on the matter and everything like that. But for now, thank you guys for joining me for lunch. I hope that you were able to grab a snack for the ride along today. And I hope to see you guys again tomorrow because we're doing this every day of the week. Why the heck not? So until then, peace out. You guys take it easy and have a good one. Oh my goodness.